to The Actor and the Engineer. My name is Paul James. I am the actor.
And my name's Josh Knapp. I'm the broadcast engineer.
Here we go, Josh.
Yeah, we're talking about Saltburn today. I was really excited about this film, about seeing this film. I actually saw it in an advanced screening Q&A on November 13th or something. So I saw it like 2 weeks ago, over 2 weeks ago. And I was excited to see it, and so excited that the only seats that were available were in the front row. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. Because afterwards they had a Q&A with Emerald Fennell. And so I was like, this is going to be really cool. And it just didn't do it for me. And since then, I've rewatched Promising Young Woman, and I've listened to the director and writer commentary of Promising Young Woman. And it's done two things. It's helped me to redefine why I liked Promising Young Woman so much and why I didn't like Saltburn as much. How about you? What was your experience?
That's very interesting that that's how you started. I have not rewatched Promising Young Woman since the third time that I saw it, whenever it was, back in the day, after the Oscars, I think.
2020, yeah.
Yeah, crazy yeah. How I can wake up when I want to. I can go back to bed when I want to. So I was like, I'm going to go to the movies all day long. Well, I went to see May December, and that stopped me because that movie is right here, right now, and will not leave me alone. And what I vowed I would not do was talk about that movie in respect to Saltburn, because one did it for me and one did not. So it's interesting that that's how you started. Now, both of those are Emerald Fennell films, so that makes sense, but I understand what you're talking about. I understand that a film that works can show you how much you love about that film and how it works and why it works for you. And it can also reflect onto another film and say, this is why I didn't get into this other film. So listen, I was looking forward to this movie. Obviously, Emerald Fennell won the Oscar, and I was all about her, and some people were dragging on her about
screenwriting.
For screenwriting.
That will come back later.
Okay. I think we're on the same page. I think we're on the same page here. I was hoping maybe you would have, I don't know what I was hoping. I was hoping you would help me, as you well do a lot of the times, on what I'm missing, because I always think it's my deficit. Like, what are the questions being posed that I'm not answering in my own soul? Anyway, that said, Promising Young Woman was my favorite movie of the year, and it's just so well crafted. So I was looking forward to this. Barry Keoghan, we finally know how to say his name, although people say it a bunch of different ways, so whatever.
Well, he says it that way, so I'm cool saying it that way.
Yes. I even saw him being interviewed where somebody didn't say it like he says it, and he kind of side-eyes, not in a bad way, just like, that's not right, just like a flicker you can see. Anyway, so I was looking forward to it, but in the back of my head, I am a trailer. What's the word I'm looking for?
Trailer whisperer.
Yes, that's a good way to put that. I was going to say snoop. Like, I can break it down and investigate it in private eye of trailer. And instinctually, I thought, something's not going off in my brain with Saltburn. And so I was super excited, and I have a lot of questions, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to not compare it to something and make myself clear on why something didn't work without a comparison. Hopefully I don't have to do that. But overall, I was looking forward to it. And when we have these type of discussions where obviously both of us didn't take to this movie, I'd like to start with the positive, because that just makes me feel a little bit better. But every time we say, let's start with the positive, we know what's coming next. We know that it's not going to be good. The long and the short of it is this. The acting is superb. Mm-hmm. So if we were just doing an acting podcast, this would be a much easier road trip. But we're not. We're talking about the full movie experience. So I don't know.
The score is amazing. The cinematography, the fact that they chose a 4:3 or Academy aspect ratio versus a 16:9 or like a 2:35, a wider screen or anamorphic aspect ratio even, I think was a good choice.
Tell me why.
let's start with like, so this is about a student at Oxford who finds himself spending a bunch of time at this like sprawling estate of a classmate. And he kind of like winds his way into the lives of that classmate's family. So that's the basis of the film. But the estate that he goes to, called Saltburn, which is where the film gets the name from, is it's got high ceilings. There's a lot of close-ups. There's a lot of close-up shots of single people or of two people very close together. And so those they lend themselves to a more boxy frame, a squarer frame. And I think that's where that 4:3 aspect ratio, that more boxy aspect ratio, does come in handy. It's also shot on film, which a lot of movies nowadays are not shot on film. And I noticed immediately from the very first shot of him walking into Oxford, you get that kind of grainy, somewhat desaturated look. And it's Linus Sandgren, who is Academy Award winner for La La Land, and he's shot No Time to Die, and he's like Damien Chazelle's like right hand man when it comes to cinematography. So the guy knows what he's doing. So it seems like Emerald Fennell's able to like surround herself with great craftspeople that are able to put her vision on screen. And I think that she did the same thing in Promising Young Woman, which for a debut film was amazing. But then in this one, she's kind of like using that film as a jumping off point for this film. And so she's still able to get the best out of the people around her, actors included. Obviously, the music selection, and she was great at that in Promising Young Woman too, that her song choices were amazing. And then same thing in this one. There's certain songs in this film that I will never think of again anything else but being as a part of this movie. So I think that says something about how a filmmaker can evoke feelings by choosing the right song and the right spot in their films. So all that stuff, I don't have anything bad to say about it. I really don't. So those are some, high points for me in this film.
Yeah, I don't remember the score enough to talk about it, but that might be just me. The songs didn't stick. I don't think of any of the songs from this movie and go,
none of the songs.
I don't remember one of them, speaking of it right now.
Oh my gosh. Okay. All right.
Name me one.
The last song?
Tell me what it is.
Murder on the Dance Floor?
Oh, yeah. Well, that one might be easier to remember for obvious reasons, but I mean, obvious to.
Well, I have a problem with that because I don't think that geez, we're getting into it. Ugh. I don't think that scene is earned.
I agree.
At the end of the film.
I agree.
But if you take that scene as a curio, as a contained piece, I think that is an engaging piece of filmmaking. It's a single shot. It's exuberant. I mean, it is all out there in all of the different ways. So that being said, I think that it's that is filmmaking. So whether that fits inside of this film, I don't know.
All right, so give me another song that you'll never think of other than thinking about this movie when you hear that song.
Well, I never heard Pet Shop Boys' Rent, but the way that it's used in the karaoke scene in this film is
I know that song.
Incisive. So that was it, once again a perfect choice in this particular spot. Some of the in the same way that she uses Toxic in Promising Young Woman, there's a couple of songs. There's like an Arcade Fire song. There's an MGMT song that it's like they were around in 2007. Oh, by the way, this is a period piece that we didn't even say, but I think there's a reason for that. There's multiple reasons for that, but it's set in 2007, not set in present day. Because obviously people are still going to Oxford right now, but why didn't she set it at Oxford right now? She set it in 2007. I think for multiple reasons. I've listened to a lot of interviews and press that Emerald Fennell has done. She said certain things like, she was at Oxford at this time, and it's also it's not very sexy. 15 years ago is never sexy because it isn't one of those things where it hasn't come back into fashion yet. You know how like there were low-rise jeans, and then low-rise jeans come back into fashion, they go out of fashion, they come back into fashion. Like the stuff that they were wearing in 2007 is not in fashion nowadays, I guess. So it just makes people cringe. So that's another kind of like manipulation that the filmmaker is able, that Emerald Fennell is able to use for us, the film going public in present day. It'll be interesting to see in 5 years or 10 years or whatever, when some of that stuff starts coming back into fashion, like what people feel about the film when they watch it. But either way, so that's one reason I think why it's a 2007 film. Another reason is very simple, and I'll talk about it later when we get into spoilers. But so some of those song cues, the kind of needle drops, were very of the time. Mr. Brightside, the Killers song. I haven't really heard that used in a film, but that was a contemporary song at that time. But anyway, so that those types of songs are kind of like songs that are of the time.
Yeah, I don't remember any of it.
Okay. Well, so
I mean,
when did you disconnect?
When
when did you disconnect from the film?
I have been fighting to remember this film in my brain since I left the theater. I have got to struggle to say, oh yeah, that happened. Oh yeah, that happened. I went and read almost every review that allowed me to read it full, the full article on IMDb, to get an understanding of where I fell in a critical view of this movie. Sometimes I'll read them to prove that movie's great. Everybody's saying they hate it. So I'll read the reviews to see if like somebody agrees or don't agree. A lot of times I'll go back and read reviews to see if so-and-so was considered Oscar worthy during the initial reviews, or did it become a narrative, or did it become something other than back when the movie first came out? She's Oscar worthy. I go back to look for that. Disconnect. I think I disconnected from the film the moment it went from Oxford to Saltburn. And here's why. The length of time it takes to go from Oxford to Saltburn made me interested in what was happening in Oxford. And so I thought the switch was going to happen quicker. I thought it'd be in the first 10 minutes of the movie. And I'm not sure the length of time, and it might be 10 minutes. I think it's much longer, obviously. But I started to become interested in, how did these kids get into Oxford? How did this guy get into Oxford? How did he become so enthralled by these people? What is his motivation at Oxford? What is he taking? Why is he mad at this guy? Okay, there's all kind of cliche things happening. We've seen them before in films. So what is the point to being at Oxford for such a long time? What is the point? And by time I figured out there is no answer to that question, it's just to give you a backdrop so some M. Night Shyamalan twist, if you will, makes sense. And there's kind of two in there, if you will. And it didn't help it make sense for me. We could talk about later. We could just say spoilers from this point on, just in case I mess up, because you know me. So I don't know if I was ever, here's the answer to when did I disconnect? I'm not sure I was ever connected to this movie. And I was trying, I was like physically hurting, trying to figure out what is this, what did she want? What is it that she wrote that I'm not seeing? Because I value the fact that I can normally see and hear the intent of something. Whether or not it works or not, that's like some albums people hate, and I kind of dig them because I can understand what the artist, the musicians wanted. Did they get it? Maybe not, but I can understand the intent. And usually that helps me see clearer for the rest of the movie. And I was grappling with, what about this film so far, if we're just talking about the Oxford segment, what about it is calling to have me watch this? What is it? And I don't want to be on record bashing on Emerald Fennell. It's not what I want to do, but I am at a loss with this film. Why was it so long? What did we learn that we needed to know? What did we learn that's different from any other film? Why this subject again? Poor little kid, rich people. I mean, we've seen it a million times. What is it? The story in the beginning of Oxford is Oliver Twist. This is nothing but Oliver Twist set in 2007. Poor little smart kid comes and wants more. Please, sir, give me more. And nobody wants to give it to him. And then he has to suffer, and he has this friend, and blah, 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 blah. So what is it that she showed us in that first half an hour segment that was important to what we saw later, and why did I not grasp it? I'm not asking you to answer these questions. I'm saying, for me, this is what's been going through my brain since I saw this movie.
Well, here's a couple of things that I heard her talk about in her Q&A, and then I've heard her talk about subsequently, and other things that I've seen her in her press tour. So she's a big fan of like these kind of Cruel Intentions, Dangerous Liaisons, those types of films, like just like horny movies, or, you know, sexy movies. And so I think she was trying to create a movie like that, but then also trying to weave in this power dynamic, you know, the fact that the people who own Saltburn, the family that owns Saltburn, and the people within, and, you know, the fact that there are servants there, and there's this like quiet power associated with the Jacob Elordi character. What's his name? See, I don't even remember his name. The Jacob Elordi character, Felix, and the yearning for power, and the yearning for that kind of status that Barry Keoghan's Oliver has. And so she's trying to like shove all that together, this kind of like, you know, we don't, you know, her kind of thing was like, we don't really have those kinds of like the kind of like sexy, I don't know the right words. It's not grimy, but it's like this kind of like raw sexiness of like a Cruel Intentions, or like the pulpiness of a Cruel Intentions. And then there's also you mesh that with the kind of like period British Gothic country house type things. I've heard a lot of people talk about Brideshead Revisited, which I have not seen or read, but I think it's one of those things where it's like someone who's an outsider coming into one of these families, and has a guy who has like I think Jeremy Irons was in this like 1981 British miniseries, but he has like a relationship with a brother and a sister within this family. And so that's another kind of like touch point or touchstone for her when talking about these films. So she's trying to bundle all of this stuff together, and I think that's where it starts to suffer, because she creates all of these characters. I mean, some of the characters are just like, they just leap off the screen. The Rosamund Pike character, Lisbeth, or Elspeth, she's amazing in this film. Her scenes, her lines, the way that she portrays herself and holds herself, like she's great in the film. But it's you can kind of like evaluate each of these characters individually within the film, but once you start to try to like string it together and find this, you know, who are we rooting for? Who do we push for? Who is there a protagonist? Are we all the antagonist? Like, you know, what are the questions that she wants us to ask ourselves? And this is also the same in Promising Young Woman, especially in some of the male characters at the beginning of the film. You know, those male characters at the beginning of Promising Young Woman, they think they're the good guy. Like they're the protagonist. You know, they don't think they're doing anything wrong at the beginning of the film. And there was one Anatomy of a Scene that I watched where she was like, I don't know anybody who's all good, you know, who is like just like a good person. Like, you know, everybody has, you know, complexities to them. And so I think she's trying to live in that space, which is fine. But when you have a narrative story and you have people in these situations and you have stakes, like we as an audience, we're expecting for you to captain the ship, like keep us going, push us forward, get us somewhere. Like we need to start at point A and end at point B, or point D.
Start at W and get back to A and go to pee like Quentin Tarantino does.
That's fine.
I have no problem with that. If I evaluate the first, let's just say 30 minutes, because I don't know how long it is. Let's just say for conversation purposes, 30 minutes of the film. If I don't know how the plane lands, then I can analyze what we're watching in the first 30 minutes. Because in the first 30 minutes, is he in love with him? Are they attracted to each other? Is it about money? Is it about status? Is it about reputation? Is it about being a big man on campus? Is it about a girl? Is it about another guy? Is it about, what is it? Okay, I can handle all of those questions. Is he attracted to his status, or is he attracted to him being an extremely attractive man? Is he feeling left out of the Christmas party because he feels like he's part of that and needs to be part of that, but doesn't feel like he's socially able to be part of that because he's not an unattractive guy? Not that being attractive should be a reason why you can and can't go to a Christmas party. I'm just saying he's a little maybe off-putting in his kind of presentation as a human being, but that's could be attributed to him being really intelligent, and his way of thinking is faster than most people or slower than most people, whatever it may be. So all those questions I can answer with how she lands the plane, but she lands that plane and then just barely touches the tarmac and takes it off again. And I'm like, well, okay. And she does that a couple of times. And so when I got to the end of the movie, it's not that the questions that she poses near the end of the film, it's not that the end of the film should answer my first 30-minute questions, but it shouldn't pose so many more questions that I can't even remember I have questions about the first 30 minutes of the film. So I think your captain analogy is a good one. I'd like to read the original draft of this film. Somewhere along the lines, this film, I think, was more concise. It was one or the other. It wasn't all of this stuff. And if it was all of this stuff, my question is, what's the point of view she wants to take from the film? And because you started the conversation with sort of compare and contrast to Promising Young Woman, or at least using that as an example of how to look at an Emerald Fennell film, because that's her first and only one at that point. People come out of that film, men, a few that I've spoken to, not all men, almost are defensive about, well, she put him in that situation and all this other stuff. So there's a question there. Are you not able to see that regardless of whether or not they're in that situation, they shouldn't think that they should sleep with somebody who's comatose? There's a question there, and it brings something up inside of people. And then at the end of the film, which a lot of people are now saying she didn't land the plane with that one, but I think that inspires remorse, and everybody's talking about, it's past the 3-year period of time. So now we got to hate on it because we loved it so much. Now we got to hate on it. It's what we do in America. And then we'll knock her down, and then she'll come back and win another Oscar and blah, 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 blah. We just do that in this country. I don't know why, but we do. Maybe people see things differently in 3 years. So at the end of that movie, did she do the right thing by setting herself up that way? There's 1,000 different opinions to how that happened and what people's views on that. But the question is very clearly posed. It's very clearly the intention of the end of the film has a point of view. Whether or not I take it the way that she meant it is one thing. Whether or not the world takes it, or you give your art to people and they have their own opinion, strange comparison. Everybody kept asking me the last play that I did, what did it mean? And I kept saying, I don't know. I just learned the lines. That was my responsibility. You guys go figure it out. And that's more true than not with art. Art is in the eye of the beholder. You have to figure it out on your own. But the idea that the director / screenwriter in this particular case, in these two cases, Saltburn and Promising Young Woman, are the same person, there is an intent. And she had an intent that was clear in Promising Young Woman. My interpretation of her intent is my interpretation of her intent, if any of what I just said made sense. This film, Saltburn, seems unclear what the intent is meant to be, whether or not my interpretation is correct or not, or my interpretation is what I took from it, I can't interpret it because I don't even understand the basic intent of what she meant. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think that, you've got to be able to, as a writer, I would think you would need to be able to write each character and be able to embody that character. And so as someone who went to Oxford and comes from money, maybe she can't embody the character of someone who doesn't come from money. She was able to embody the character of a woman who gets hit on or who could potentially be in a dangerous situation when after drinking too much at a bar, because she may have been in that situation. So maybe that's why it worked for Promising Young Woman, and that was the main character of that film. But the main character of this film is someone who does go to Oxford but doesn't come from money. So maybe that's a situation that she can't square or can't easily put on screen, can't give that character the right the clearest motivations. It's also not it's a malicious character. Like, he's just a malicious character.
But that's my point. That I didn't want to get there too soon, but that's my point. My point is that we don't have an idea who this person is based on his last couple of choices. And then we find out via his last choices that we see, and then we find out that the choices that we were seeing in the beginning are not what we were seeing. Mm-hmm. They were different than what we interpreted them to be, but that null and voids everything, in my opinion. And side note, back to what you were saying, and that's a good observation about, well, maybe she can't write because she can't relate. But she's not a middle-aged woman who has a child who is depressed and doesn't do anything. Jennifer Coolidge in Promising Young Woman. She's not Clancy Brown. She's not a middle-aged guy who has a daughter who's not doing anything and has got the coolest voice in the world and should play Lex Luthor in everything he's in. She's not them. She's not Molly Shannon whose daughter was killed, and she wrote her beautifully. That's one of the best scenes in that movie. She's not a rapey young kid who gets too drunk and decides that she's going to take advantage of some. Now, could she have been in the reverse situation? Sure, like you had said.
Sure, could have
been,
yeah.
She's not any of those people. She's not Laverne Cox, the manager of a coffee shop that thinks that this promising young woman should be out there promising. She's not Bo Burnham, too cool for school Bo Burnham, who is this doctor, pediatrician kind of guy, hipster, slick kind of, null and void of traditional masculinity. And that's appealing because that's what Cassie needs to feel safe and blah, blah, blah. She's not any of those things, but she wrote those characters beautifully. So I don't know if that holds water. And she writes Rosamund Pike and Richard E. Grant. And
she's probably been around those kinds of people, though.
That's true. That said, that doesn't mean that, for me, I don't know, I'm not a screenwriter, for a movie-going person, the audience of this movie, it doesn't matter to me whether or not she can write the character or not. The situation that she is putting these characters in don't add up. I don't know what she wanted with those big reveals, with the trip out to his parents' house. What did she want from us knowing this about this character at this point?
Well, we're already into spoilers, so I think that that's supposed to be the revelation. That's supposed to be, she's pulling the rug out from under us as the audience, and she's saying, like, this character has ulterior motives, and the fact that, I think that she, in some ways, she utilizes that to her advantage, because in a normal situation, that would be it. The Felix character would just cut off Oliver. That would be it. But he's so proper, and he doesn't want to cause anyone inconvenience, or doesn't want to there to be any kind of impropriety, that he allows him back, and he allows for him to be there for his party, and all of these things happen that wouldn't normally happen in a real situation in the real world. He'd be like, you're weird, you're out of here.
Right, but the only reason why he lets him back is because the party's for him and already happening.
Yeah,
the
but it
party's
doesn't
like the
matter.
next day.
He could go back and be like, "Hey, we're rich. We'll just cancel the party. Big deal.
Or
We'll have a party
it's
without
just a
him."
party. Right,
Exactly.
yeah.
And that guy's a weird guy who, told us that he, was a person he wasn't. Like there's all kinds of reasons why he could have, but he didn't want to put anybody out. He was trying to be proper. Like that's why all that happened. So,
and in a way, that's interesting because the character you think is going to be one way becomes the good guy, and the character you think is the good guy. But that's really not my problem or issue. My issue is that even when you find out what's happening with his parents, I was thinking he's just a young middle-class kid who thinks he has to have an Oliver Twist upbringing in order to be interesting to these people at Oxford, that he's not interesting as your status quo, as your normal person of middle-class status who has two parents and, he's, writers are suicidal and they had parents who left him on this doorstep and all these tragedies happened when they were younger. Thus the reason why they are considered interesting and made life choices that made art, which made them even more interesting.
Yeah. Felix needs someone to rescue. And Felix is the rich guy, needs someone to rescue, and Oliver gives him that person in the character that he crafts, that person to rescue.
It just sounds so much more interesting when we're talking about it than when what is it me? I feel bad about this in a way because I feel like this movie might connect to other people. And I also feel like, is it that 10-year rule where you watch this again in 10 years and you're in a different place in your world and you go, oh, okay, I see it differently. It's like some movies take on a life of their own and are tore apart in the beginning. Fight Club's a great example. I don't know why I just thought of that, but it is. And now it's considered this thing. It's considered this cult classic, even though it's really a mainstream movie. So I don't know. Maybe it is. I'm trying to figure out how to lightly step through this film and understanding this film without sounding like I'm bashing on it and giving respect to the person who wrote and directed it, who I think deserves respect. And I use this example all the time because it makes sense to me. You go into a museum, you might not know why you're looking at what you're looking at, but you have a visceral feeling from it. You have a feeling that comes over you. That might not be the reason why the artist gave you or the artist created it. And then you get those little pamphlets or you listen to the little headsets and they describe certain things that makes the artwork make sense on a different level because it's been explained how the artist, why they use this material, so forth and so on. I feel like my first initial feelings to this film have not allowed me to open my mind to the fact that, well, maybe she's got director notes that will help me make this make sense. It's not computing in my brain to be even interested in that, to learn more about it. Don't bash on the film, Paul, and then spend 5 minutes bashing on it.
Well, okay. So I've just recently watched another film that for me is a film I'd heard about. Came out in 1989, Peter Greenaway, who's a British filmmaker, and I think it was rated whatever it was back then, X or NC-17 or something. Maybe it was before NC-17. But in the United States, I don't even think it was like released in theaters. It was called The Cook, the Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover. Okay, so I could not get into this movie. And there were certain things about it that were interesting to me. It seemed like it was set in like even the outdoor, quote unquote, outdoor scenes were set on like a set, and like there was a lot of like dollying, and there was these tropes in the film, like whenever they were in the bathroom, like all of the clothing turned to white, and when they were in the hallway or in the restaurant area, all their clothing was red, and when they were in the kitchen, their clothing was green. So it's like it's a crafted film, and there is intention behind everything, and the score is intentional, and it's just the feeling of the film is like, it feels like it's important, but it just felt trashy, and worthless. And then, so I couldn't even I got like 2/3 of the way through it, and I was like, all right, I'm done. Like, I can't, like, I tried multiple nights in a row, and I was like, I'm done. And then I started reading a little bit about it, and it's like a takedown of Margaret Thatcher's Britain, and it's like there's like all of this like in these intricacies, and like Roger Ebert is like heaping praise on it, and it's like all of this stuff that like completely passed me by. And it's like, number one, I wasn't a moviegoer of that, in that area, in that time period. I was 8 years old, so like I'm not gonna be watching that movie at 8 years old. So like I didn't know what was going on when the movie came out, and I don't have the British history to put behind it, and like it was a heavy lift. Like it's a heavy lift to like figure out what Peter Greenaway was trying to put in front of me, and like. So as far as that film is concerned, like it did not land with me. And so like maybe in a similar way, Saltburn is not landing with me because like the things that are right out front, I'm not really interested in. The shocking parts, whatever you want, like the shocking sexual parts, I'm not really that interested in. And
I needed more. If you're going to do that, go more.
I was wondering about that as far as you're concerned, because like I'm not a Euphoria watcher, and you are. Like you're all in on that guy. What's the guy? What's his name? Sam Levinson? What's his name?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Barry Levinson's son.
Yes. Yeah. So you're all in on him. Like, so you've seen all of his stuff. So like, and that's kind of part of his trade, it's like utilizing that to tell a story, it's not just a thing that he puts in front of you. It's a tool in his toolkit. So like, how would you compare like how that's used in Euphoria versus how that's used in Saltburn, the overly sexual parts of the film?
Well, okay, that's an interesting question. And I think it's an interesting question on so many levels. And we've tapped into some of this before. We've often talked about if you're going to show something, show it. If you're not, then don't. So I think if you're talking about Euphoria, they don't pull any punches because it's part of the story. There's an episode in the second season that you find out about a character's backstory, and it's not a character you think you're going to see the backstory of, and then you see the backstory, and as the backstory is going along, you kind of put it together who it is, or at least I did. I'm not sure other people did, and I'm sure other people got it quicker. And they are young men in... I think they're high school still, and they are on the football team, and they all gather the shower. And, those shots are always shot. The guy starts walking to the shower, and the camera moves just as he gets into the shot where you're going to see kibbles and bits. And so that to me is like, then don't shoot him unless you're meaning to be titillating, unless you're meaning to be arousing somebody by this shot, then leave it out, because that's not what happens in real life. It's all of a sudden a towel is not there, or a locker is open right at the right moment, or blah, blah, or a person's bent over so you can't see. And that shower scene is filmed as if people are taking showers together. And then there are specific shots in that of specific things the characters are looking at. And it's never not what it's supposed to be. So is it odd to all of a sudden have a screen full of things at you? Yeah, a little, but it's more unnerving on some level for me to know that they're shooting around, not showing things, than to just shoot them, especially if it's about this character looking over and seeing this other character's. I'm trying to be mature about it, but I can't think of anything other than kibbles and bits to say, because I'm also a little like weary of how to talk about it. So the point to that is, so with Saltburn, what was the point of the sexual stuff that happens in the film, other than the great joke behind I would drink her bathwater? You know how you always, other than that joke coming to fruition, and it actually happening, what's the point of seeing that? What was the point? Was the point that he was I think it needed to be made clear. And I think being sexually attracted to somebody is not a clear enough view to have of why somebody would do what Oliver does in that scene. Being transfixed by power, being transfixed by his beauty, being transfixed by the money, being transfixed by not being any of those things don't come across in that scene.
I think to me, like the only thing I could pull from that would be like that wanting to have a part of him. That is it. That's the only thing I could grasp from that. You know,
and
like,
I wish that I had gotten that. That's so much more interesting to me that you said that. If that's what she meant, I missed it, and I wish I had gotten that. Then there had to have been a way. I don't know. I'm not a filmmaker, but for me as an audience member, it seemed. I don't know what it did not come across that way.
I think he wanted to commingle with, he wanted to be the same as Felix, as opposed to like, no, I don't even know if necessarily if it's in a sexual way, it's in an overtaking way, like in a symbiotic way or in a parasitic way. Like I will latch on to this thing and then I will overtake it. You know what I mean? Like I will now become it. Which, we're in spoilers, he did become it. He became Felix. He owned Saltburn.
Did he, though?
In his mind, he did.
Well, okay. We'll get there in just a second, because that to me undermines everything that she did from the beginning of the film on. It just did. It was like, why are you making that choice? Okay, let's go back. So he wanted to consume and become him. So the bathtub scene is him consuming one of the most intimate parts of him and getting it inside him. Okay, that I would buy. Then where are the other scenes to back that up?
Well, he kind of
Mom,
views him.
I'm telling you, he unpacked my bag and my underwear. My favorite underwear is gone. Something. Okay. Oh, darling, you know how it is. So it's hard to get good help. Just don't bring that back next time you come from Oxford. You love those underwear. You see, blah, blah. Don't bring stuff that you don't want to lose at Saltburn. You know how this house is. You lose stuff, blah, 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 blah. And then have, what's the cousin's name?
Farley.
Oh, man. Farley. I was going to say Felix for some reason, but that's the other guys. And then have Farley say to Annabelle, those red underwear that Oliver's wearing, don't they look familiar? They're whatever. No, they came from that store and blah, 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 blah. They're pretty expensive underwear for Oliver to wear, and leave it at that. Mm-hmm. Something for us to, if that was the intention of the tub scene, then I need something before and after to push it together for me.
This is where I think Emerald Fennell is trying to do more of the three-dimensional chess than we're giving her credit for. I think that it's not going to be 100% one or 100% the other. It's not going to be 100% I hate these people and I want to overtake them, and it's not going to be 100% I love this guy and I want to marry him. You know what I mean? It's going to be neither of those two things. So it is.
And if we were real life
it's going to be
people,
both. It's going to be like 50-50. Yeah.
And if we were at a cocktail party talking to somebody and all they talked about was their money and not something that made them seem like they had a soul, then I would be not interested in that person. But that person who has money, who came from money, who still tries to do charity, who still tries to do art, makes it interesting. But that's a cocktail party where we're meeting another real life human being, not a narrative, not a story, not a beginning, middle, and end where we are traditionally used to, on some level, allowing ourselves to come out of this experience by understanding something about ourselves, understanding something about the characters, understanding a universal theme to this movie. And I'm not saying any of that is a requirement 100%, because what the hell is The Lighthouse? Okay? We'll leave it at that.
Also shot in 4:3 and on film.
Which seemed intentional and purposeful and useful to the film. This did not. This seemed like a gimmick for me. It seemed like I kept trying to figure out why she was using it. Now, you made sense of it with the close-ups and two people in the shot. I get that. So you're not just talking about friends meeting for the first time and learning about each other as real human beings. You're talking about a story. You're talking about there are structural ways to tell stories that you can put people all in green suits and dresses in one scene and all red in another scene. And you have a reason for that. And the reason is because Margaret Thatcher sucked. But we as an audience member have to understand the way the narrative is working, whether it's A, B, or C, or what, like we were talking about, W, X, and then B, whatever it may be. We have to have some kind of understanding so we can follow along, because stories are just not told to be interpreted. They are interpreted on film so we can reinterpret it for ourselves. Does that make sense? So
are we asking her to spoon feed us?
No, I knew you were going to say that to me.
I'm asking the question. I'm not I'm not saying that that's, but I just mean, like, so why are we both feeling the same way? And I feel like we're pretty meticulous in our film dissection. So I don't feel like either one of us is like, oh, I just need you to tell me everything all the time, or else I'm not going to get it. So where did she go wrong?
I don't know. I don't know. All I can say is that I would never say what she did was right or wrong. That's not my place. My place is I felt this, and this during the film, and I'm not sure any of it is what she wanted us to feel during the film. And maybe she's like putting it up there and saying, feel whatever you want to. And that's that's so elusive and so like, okay, I believe in letting art flow over you and being like creative. I get it. But sometimes you have to have a way you can interpret things for your own, because why are you and I, two American males, watching this film? What's the point? The point has to be something that came from us that we projected on the film, or something from the film that got projected back onto us, so forth and so on. And I've resisted. It's 52 minutes now. I've resisted. When I walked out of May, December, I knew exactly what I felt, exactly how I felt about those characters, exactly what I took from the film. And that's sort of based on something we kind of know about already. It's in the zeitgeist of our upbringing, if you will. And I did not necessarily like the intentions of a lot of the characters in the film, but I understood the intentions of the characters in the film, and I understood what I felt about their intentions afterwards. So since we're 52 minutes into Saltburn, let's get to the point that he's not an underprivileged kid who's smart enough to get into Oxford. He's a middle-class, well-adjusted, seemingly parents love him, they miss him, blah, blah, blah. He makes all of that up. Okay, I'm not asking you to answer the question, but why is that there? Then we find out that the reason why he's done everything is to take over Saltburn and become all of these people. But if you take away the motivation of the Oliver Twist character, and I'm going to say it as many times as I can from this point on, if you take away the poor little man who's smart enough to get into Oxford but has no other means, if you take that motivation away, he is nothing but a sociopathic serial killer. That's all he is. And I just feel like if that was her intention from the beginning of the film, I didn't feel it, sense it, see it, react to it coming on any level whatsoever. So I feel shortchanged. I feel like that ending came later, where she kind of tacked it on.
It's like it's the easy answer.
No, it's not. Actually, it's the worst answer, because it poses so many more questions. Okay. Okay, if you're going to end the film like this, not specifically the very ending, but just the narrative wise, we needed to be on one or two sides, in my opinion. This is what I thought of. Either we're on the side of the poor little guy who wants to do better, so he manipulates the family into getting into their life and getting better, or the manipulative sociopath from the very beginning, which is who he is. Okay. So hold that character to the side. If he's the poor guy who's needs to come up in the world because he doesn't have status and so forth and so on, then I can understand the choices that he makes. But those are all null and void when we see him seduce the sister for the first time. Because how does he do that? And he's able to be that confident in that situation. So he's not.
He does that with the Rosamund Pike character too.
He does them with them, all of them.
Yeah, well, all of them.
Every single one of them.
Except for Richard E. Grant, but yeah.
Right. Well,
but he's Richard E. Grant.
Does.
But Richard E. Grant is kind of like beholden to his wife. So that's.
Well, and also he doesn't really have to do much work with Richard E. Grant because all he has to say is you were doing lines with him the night before at the party to Farley. And then Richard E. Grant is on Oliver's side and not on his family's side because he thinks that Farley is the reason why he's dead. Okay. So if it's not the poor guy, then it's the manipulative sociopath. Then we should be on one side or the other. So we should be rooting for him to become more successful, regardless of the means and how it takes, because we're taking down the man, we're taking down the rich people, we're taking down the class, we're creating our own little mini class war, we're taking them down. So we should have been on their side. Or if he was the sociopath, we could have been on his side too. Fincher just did a film called The Killer, and we were on that guy's side. So there is no indication throughout the film, one way or another, where to look, think, or feel about those two subjects. And I would have rather have been on the side of the sociopath.
I'm going to clip that.
I know. I was going to say that's probably like a really weird clip. That clip could get me in trouble. I would rather, as a movie-going audience, watching a narrative about a sociopath, be on the sociopaths and see how the sociopath goes around manipulating the situation to get what he wants to, then all of a sudden at the end be blindsided with this is who this character really is. And on top of that, when we do find out that this is who the character really is, then all of those things that he did in the past should click, 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 and go, oh, that's why he did that. Oh, that's why he did that. Oh, that's why he did that. And they didn't for me.
And I think that that's the other thing that hurts this film is that when it does the flashbacks to like, oh, he put a thumbtack in Felix's tire and he had a bunch of money in his wallet, but he didn't use it when he was trying to pay for those Jaeger bomb shots or whatever. I mean, it's like it's like if you have to show us that, then we're in a tough spot. We're in a real tough spot at that point. And also there's too many variables. Like he couldn't have banked on all of those things happening exactly the way that they happened. Like if he's so meticulous, like I just don't think that those would have been his plays. Like he would have had more guaranteed interactions than like acting like he couldn't pay for a round of shots, like that kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, like waiting around a corner and watching Felix walk by and him just timing it just right. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Any of those things. Like there's so many other ways you could do it that would have a higher yield than what he was doing. So that's the difficult, but that was a difficult part for me. And it's like at that point she is spoon feeding us, and then just it does kind of get lazy at the end. Like, oh well, the Richard E. Grant character dies and then she gets old and there's like whatever 6 years or something between the time that Rosamund Pike and he see each other, and then of course he runs across her right after her husband dies, and then he it's all of this stuff it does seem a bit lazy. So I'd be interested in coming back to this in a few years. It would be interesting to do what I did to this film, to do what I did with Promising Young Woman to this film when her next film comes out, because that would give me a little bit of space and a little bit of time to determine, like, is this just a meme generating machine? Is that part of it? Like, see, I'm not on TikTok. I'm not on like those types of things where like you can clip a portion of the film and like make a meme out of it, whether it's champagne tennis or the bathtub scene or him with his little horns at the party, or like any of those things. I just don't know.
I get no sense that she set up anything to have a TikTok meme or anything. I don't think she did that.
She's using a very popular actor. Jacob Elordi is a popular actor.
Because
Didn't
he's so drop dead good looking. That's why.
He just played.
How could you not
Elvis
be in love with him?
Didn't he? In Priscilla?
The straightest man would be like, maybe, because that man is really good looking.
So yeah, I mean, and he's
And he
playing.
seems nice and sophisticated, and like he seems like he would put his arm around Oliver and be like, "Come on with me, buddy." And like he made sense to me. That character made sense to me when he has the freak out about the parents. That made sense to me because I sensed deep down inside he comes from privilege. He comes from Saltburn. He comes from this world, but he really wants to be more like Oliver's real life. He really wants to be simplified. He really wants to. They do mention you're better than the one from last year, or you're more interesting, you're more real. The sister says, blah, blah, blah. I believed her motivations. I believed Farley's motivations. I believed all of their motivations, although I have some questions about like just all of a sudden throwing certain story parts in for Farley, and it's just too much to talk about right now.
Well, those guys are the parallels. I mean, Farley is he's the new Farley. You know, Oliver's the new Farley. But Farley's family, so that's where it kind of gets a little bit tighter knit. But
that's more interesting than what the last 45 minutes gave me. Okay, and then on top of all of that stuff, so nobody noticed her tube ripped out. Nobody was suspicious of her tube just being ripped out. It's a great little like dramatic thing.
It's a flourish. It's definitely a flourish.
Well, what it is look how sociopathic I am. Woo! That's what it was. That's what it was. And I want to talk about two things before we end this, because I'm getting the sense that we have to come to a conclusion because like something wicked this way comes. We're just going to start bashing if we continue. And by us, I mean me. Okay, so at the beginning of the podcast, we do this quite often. We'll mention something and then we'll never circle back around to it. And by us, I mean me. But you had mentioned earlier something about her being an Academy Award winning screenwriter. And you said you'll talk about that later. Do you remember why you were making that reference?
It's all we were talking about. It's how she's crafting these characters. Like that's in the screenplay. Like she's telling them what to say. She's setting the scenes. She's giving them the scenarios, and none of it is satisfying enough to explain the film in a satisfying way. That's it. That was it.
Okay. That's what I thought, but I just wanted to make sure.
The only other thing that I'm gonna circle back on is the fact that I said that this is a period piece, and I think one reason why is because yes, she was in Oxford at that time. Second reason is because it was 2007. Before smartphones,
I was going to say,
and also before really Facebook or any kind of like big social, social type sites, and so there was no easy way for Felix to check on the background of Oliver. You know what I mean? Like easily.
But if
like,
you said it,
I'll friend you. You know,
if you said it in 2019 and he has no social media footprint, that's way more interesting to me.
Yeah,
that I see why she did what she did. I get it. I get the it's becoming a trope now where you leave out the cell phones on purpose so your narrative can work.
It's easy. But it's so much easier.
It is so much easier. But sometimes it would be interesting to see how it would work out if it was smartphone world, and how you would get around things with smartphones. Sometimes it's I dropped it down the toilet. Okay. Just, said it in 2008. So, okay. So let's get back to the last scene, which I loved the way that you put it. It's an interesting thing, but it's not earned.
Yep.
And that is completely one, fair, and two, exactly how I would like to have articulated it. And I'm going to pretend I came up with it and steal it from this point on. I might credit you. I might not. I'm not sure. I might say, that guy is really smart. He's got 2 Emmys. He could have thought of this after I dragged it out of him.
Sure. Of course.
So it's not earned. I will start with this. It is the only scene in the movie where when he comes in, you're thinking to yourself, the piano's going to be in the place. The door's going to be open a certain way. He's going to turn right at the wrong moment. And she doesn't do that. She allows him to literally dance naked in front of us. Mm-hmm. So props to her not pulling any punches and trying not to show Barry Keoghan in his birthday suit. Good for her, because the scene in the middle of the film where they go into the field, they're like, no clothes in the film. Or the field, whatever. First of all, that's your sister and that's your cousin. So why do you want to be naked with them? Like, and then they, of course, make reference when Barry Keoghan takes his pants off, they make some kind of reference. Good for him. Congratulations. But you see Barry Keoghan from behind and you're thinking, okay, that scene might have been more interesting if you're seeing what they're talking about, because at this point, why are you not showing us anything? Because it should be right in our face.
It's being referenced by the characters. Yeah.
Right. But it seems like that hidden knee trick, it's like, but then at the end of the film, she's like, nope.
Yeah, it's Chekhov's penis.
Right. Can I have a t-shirt with that on it, please? Please, sir. Can I have it in extra large black, please? Wait, what? The t-shirt.
Okay.
Black, extra large.
Got it.
T-shirt. All right. Wow, that took a turn. Wow. Sometimes I just don't know I'm just going to leave it alone. So I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
It was not earned. And I think if he was able, and I call it the Silence of the Lamb treatment. You remember how when you first meet Hannibal, there's that weird character next to him who's like yelling. And all of a sudden she comes back like 2 days later and he's dead. Mm-hmm. And somebody says, oh, I heard Hannibal whispering to him in the middle of the night. And it's interjected that he got him to off himself on some kind of level, some kind of psychological thing that he did to him. If that's what Oliver did to the family to bring them down, the dance naked scene would have been appropriate. If he had done things, the reason why he's at Oxford, see, the question comes back to the money. If he had a good upbringing, what was it that pushed him to a point where he needed that status when he comes from a reasonable, it's not like it's the complete opposite of what Saltburn is, where he was raised. It's not an unreasonable upbringing. It's not like the streets. It's not like ham sandwich from the trash can. It's not that, which could be a motivation for him to want to become what he becomes. And if it was that, and he psychologically brought them down, made them see the error of their own ways and the flaws of them being a human being, and showed them that their consumption of the world was wrong, and psychologically took them out one by one, I would have felt better about the film in general and about the dance naked scene at the end. I would have celebrated with him, even though it would have been wrong, morally speaking. So I think your thoughts on it being not earned are correct.
Yeah. It's too bad. I mean, because I do love scenes, bold scenes and scenes that integrate music like that. And I love, long, shots like that, because it's everybody's, firing on all cylinders as far as like the camera operator and, Barry Keoghan and the choreography and all that's like, it's a difficult thing to do, to a prolonged, it's probably, 2.5 minutes or something, 3 minutes maybe. So like, that's a difficult thing to do. So like, I feel like it's something that can be celebrated on a technical level, but once again, it just kind of falls flat. So that's the crappy part about the whole thing.
Hopefully when we revisit this film in the future, which I like the fact that we interjected that into the conversation, and I said, and then you said just recently, just a couple minutes ago, that maybe you'll do the same thing you did with, this film after other films of hers come out. And we've talked about, revisiting other films, and we have revisited other films later on, Mother being one of them, none of which time and understanding of what that film was made it work any more for me, but maybe it'll be different with this film. But and this is too much of a conversation to have at the end of the podcast, but you were talking about the cinematographer and you were talking about this and that. And I just don't understand why you would have such lush production design in a film and you can barely see it 90% of the time, because it's so dark and it's so moody and it's so shot all in red or all in this. And at the end of the film, and this is what reminded me of, you actually get to see Saltburn as he's dancing around. Now, I don't know who's looking at Saltburn when he's dancing around naked, but I was trying to figure out, is that the blue room? Is that the green room? Like somewhere along the lines, I was trying to figure out exactly where it was.
It's the same path that Jacob Elordi took him through at the beginning.
And that's what I thought. And it's so much more interesting at the end of the film, regardless of the naked man dancing. the way that it's lit up. The windows are open, and the way that it's lit up. The way that it's shot in the beginning of the film is very suffocating. It's very claustrophobic. It's very like open a window. It's
stale. Yeah. I mean, there's
stale.
flypaper in one of the chandeliers, you know? It's like it's that kind of like it's setting the scene for you. Like it's been like this forever, you know. That's I think where she's going with that. But and there's, you know, there's pieces of art, you know, when they're doing the tour, he's like, oh, this is a, you know, a desk from so and so from the 16th century or what, you know. It's like it's that kind of stuff, you know, where it's just like everything's been here forever, you know, and it will be here forever, and it will always be ours, you know. I think that's kind of what she's going for in the first scene, in the first tour scene, and then obviously in the last one, it's like, no, it's some random dude who I guess doesn't have any servants anymore and is just dancing around his...
Or doesn't care that he has
Or doesn't
servants.
care, I guess. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I mean, I just didn't see anybody else around.
Reckless abandonment because he got what he wanted. But, and I'll leave it at this. He got what he wanted. I just didn't know that that's what he wanted. And I didn't understand how he went about getting it.
Yeah, it was tough. It was tough because, like, you know, it's like he was crossing the finish line and we didn't even know he was running the race.
Well, he is running another race, and it was back here, and I was looking at this race here. So,
all right. Well,
I have faith. I
wanted to make another movie as quickly as possible.
I have faith that there are things in this film that will make it make sense to me in the future, and I will have a different emotional reaction to it. I have faith.
All right.
So
that sounds good.
We'll see.
All right. You can check us out on the web at actorandengineer.com. You can go to facebook.com/actorandengineer. And you can find us on YouTube. Just search for the Actor and the Engineer podcast, and we'll be there. And we'll see you next time.